Hello friends, I hope you are well. My name is Surina Taneja. I'm a junior doctor who trained and is working in the UK, and I'm in my second year of being a doctor. The core surgical training program is the most common first step to becoming a surgeon in the UK. Typically you start it after completing your foundation 2 year and it's 2 years long. After that you apply for further specialty registrar level training. I recently applied to the core surgical training pathway myself, and as you might have guessed from the title of this video, I'm going to go through how I tackled the portfolio section. Now, full discretion, I am not a surgeon. I've not even found out if I've been accepted onto surgical training at all. So what gives me the audacity to make this video? Well, I found throughout my medical career, the most valuable advice comes from someone who's just done the stage that I'm about to do, because it's the most fresh in their minds and it's the most up-to-date information. And if you're watching this and you're in the position where you're starting to think about applications, then hopefully you'll find this video useful today. So with that disclaimer out of the way, let's jump into the video. As always, topics are timestamped in the video description below, so you can skip around to the sections that are the most relevant for you. Okay, so briefly, what does the core surgical training, or CST, application consist of? The application process is points based. It's quite a competitive training program with around 3 to 4 applicants for every job every year, and so everyone who applies is ranked based on certain points. There are 3 sections of point scoring. One is the portfolio, so pre-interview, and the other 2 sections are within the interview itself. The portfolio is worth 72 points, the clinical section of the interview is worth 72 points, and the management section of the interview is worth another 72 points, so that's 216 points in total. So why is it important to focus on the portfolio? As we've just seen, the portfolio is worth a massive 1/3 of all points available, and what's more, it's the first hurdle you need to cross to be even considered for an interview. From what I understand, people generally tend to perform quite similarly in the interview, but the portfolio can be quite a differentiator. So I definitely think it's worth spending time on to get as many points as you can. The cutoff to get an interview can be quite high. I believe this year it was around 47 out of 72, which is extremely high, but not impossible, as hopefully I'll show you in this video. So let's talk about the scoring criteria. What are all these points for? The best thing to do is to treat this whole process like a game, and if you want to do well in any game, you need to know the rules inside out. The CST portfolio scoring criteria is released as a document every year around the time the application process opens, and they are incredibly explicit about what gets you points and, most importantly, what evidence you need to show to get these points. I think this is great, and you can really use this to your advantage to play the game exactly how they want you to. Please note, however, the wording and the weighting in this document changes ever so slightly every year. I'll be basing this video on this year's document, but I anticipate it will be quite similar in future years to come. So I'm just going to open up the scoring criteria document. There are 9 sections in total. There's commitment to surgery, postgraduate degrees, prizes and awards, QI and audit, teaching, training and teaching, presentations, publications, and leadership. When you first read it, it is very daunting and it seems like there is so much expected of you, but I'm going to break it down and show you how it can be made achievable. I'm not going to go into detail about the generic categories like publishing, posters and presentations. I've actually done a video talking about how to do all of these things, and hopefully there's a link on the screen somewhere for now if you want to go check that out. Okay, so starting with section number 1, which is commitment to surgery. First up is the MRCS Part A examination, which if you've sat and passed, that's amazing, that's worth 3 points, but you do not even need to have passed it or even sat it. Just by simply booking it, you secure yourself 1 point. I know it's only 1 point, but all these things add up. So if you can just book it at some point before you apply, you've already secured yourself that point. If you are sitting it soon or thinking about sitting it in the future, go check out my other videos going into a lot of detail about this exam, and they should be somewhere on the screen for you to click on. Moving on to the next section, which is about surgical courses. To maximise points here, you need to have attended 2 courses. Really common ones are things like basic surgical skills, the advanced trauma life support, there's CCRISP, which I can't remember what it stands for. The pandemic has played absolute havoc with these courses. A lot of them had been cancelled. They are also quite expensive. I believe the ATLS one is upwards of about £1,000. So these points aren't cheap, but I didn't do any of these courses and still managed to maximise these points. My hospital was running a surgical skills workshop, which was open to the whole region, so it counted as a regional course. I also did a laparoscopic course that was being offered at university, and that also counted as well. Keep a lookout for these courses. If you look online, ask around at your university or medical school, a lot of these things are low cost or even free, and they still counted in my case. The portfolio does give a list of courses that they will approve. My courses weren't actually on that list, but still did get approved, so I believe they are quite lenient. As long as it's got a clear surgical focus, it should be accepted. There is also a little hack here, which is one of the courses listed in their accepted courses, is this online catheter course. It's done completely online. You just click through the modules. It's completely free. Big disclaimer though, looks like the whole country had the same idea when it got close to application time, and the website was completely full of traffic and kept crashing, so I didn't actually get to finish the course at all. I ended up just submitting the 2 courses I had done and hoped for the best, and it worked out. I'll put the link for the catheter course in the description below. Hopefully it's working a little bit better now. Alright, next thing is surgical experience, and they very specifically said they will be measuring that in the number of cases you have been involved with. You can see here, the more cases you've done, the more points you get, and 15 cases or more is when you max out these points. If we go down here and have a look at the evidence that is accepted to show you've had this experience, it clearly says that you need a logbook summary sheet. So a common platform that's used is the e-logbook. Every time you go to theatre, whether that's observing or assisting, you should put it on your e-logbook. You just click here, add operation. You can add your speciality here. You need some patient details, the patient ID and the age. So every time you're in theatre, make sure you make a note of these things so you can put them straight onto e-logbook after the operation. So that's it. If you can get 15 cases down on there anytime before the application process, you've got maximum points of that section too. The next section is a surgical taster week. For maximum points, this needs to be 4 or 5 days long. This is super easy to organise. You just reach out to departments and surgeons within your hospital and let them know you want to spend a few days with them. You might need to get study leave for it, but if that all gets sorted, this is a super easy thing to get points for. The only evidence you need for this is a reflection, and you also need a letter signed from the consultant who was supervising you. I think this is great because not only will you get the points for the taster week, but ideally you'll spend some time in theatre as well, and you can quickly rack up the number of cases on your logbook to get you towards your maximum points for that section too. So it's definitely worth organising this in my opinion. So the last subsection in this section is a surgical elective. Now traditionally in UK universities at least, the elective is a clinical placement you do typically abroad towards the end of your medical school. This is where finding this document as early as possible comes in useful. If you've read that this is worth points in medical school, then you've got time to arrange your elective to be in surgery. I don't know if they're going to change this section in the next year because obviously these electives haven't been happening or plans have had to change a lot. They've not really defined what else an elective could mean, whether it could just be a placement you independently organise or whether it is the formal elective you do at the end of medical school in the UK. So I'm not too sure about this section and what's going to be happening going forward, but if you are organising an elective, definitely make it either surgical or to have some sort of surgical element so that you can get these points too. Okay, next section is quality improvement and audit. Now I think this section is non-negotiable because it's worth a ton of points and it can be simply and quickly achieved if you're organised. Briefly, quality improvement and audit is where you look at a service you're providing or the patient care you're delivering. You think about how it can be better or how it should be better according to some guidelines, and then you go about bringing it closer to that better service or better provision of care. Now, I'm not going to go into details about how to perform audits. If that's something that you want to know more about, let me know in the comments below. What advice I will give you is talk to your seniors and other people in your department about any audits that they're working on or have ideas for, and whether they need help with data collection so that you can be part of it too. Failing that, you can lead one yourself. That's exactly what I did. You can Google ideas online and see what audits people have done in the past and presented at previous conferences. See what audits have happened in your own hospital before. Most hospitals actually have a department dedicated to audit and quality improvement, and you can contact them for advice. The key thing here is to keep it as simple as possible. It should be a very simple concept that you are investigating. The data you need for it should be easy to access, easy to analyze, and just as clean as possible. So whenever I'm thinking about a project, I try and imagine the Excel spreadsheet I'll need to make to collect the data and process the data. If you can clearly imagine your columns and heading titles, visualize what you will do with that data and what kind of findings might be useful, then I think it's more likely to be a good idea and something that you can realistically achieve. Some really common audit topics include looking at VTE and the quality of prescribing, such as antibiotics and fluid prescribing. I was on a geriatric department at the time and decided to do an audit looking at the sealing of care documentation. That was quite easy to collect data on because we have very clear forms in everyone's notes. Even though my hospital is paper-based and it's an absolute nightmare to collect data for some things, this was really easy because there was a go-to form that I could quickly read and quickly log onto my data collection spreadsheet. Some key points I want to draw your attention to in the portfolio. To get the higher scoring points, you very specifically need to do 2 cycles of the audit or QI project. What that means is you need to identify an area of patient service or care delivery that you think can be improved, and showing how the hospital or the department is performing by collecting the data and analysing the data. Then you put in an intervention, and then you have to collect the data again to see if your intervention made any difference. So that's what 2 cycles means. Now for top marks, you present it at a national conference. I understand that's difficult to do, to find a conference and get your timings right with when you finish your project. I just presented at my local departmental meeting, which happens every week. So it was very easy to organise, and that still gets you 9 out of the 11 points. Next section is teaching. Now teaching is such a rewarding part of being a doctor in my opinion. What is key for this portfolio in terms of what you need to get the maximum points, it must be a formal teaching program that you've organised that lasts for at least 3 months. But crucially, you don't need to be teaching consistently throughout this 3-month period. The ideal solution to this is to get sort of 3 colleagues as a group, organise this teaching program to last 3 months. Then you can all just teach 1 session each per month. You get even more colleagues to help, then you can teach even less frequently each. And as long as the program in total lasts for 3 months or more, you'll get a lot of points for this section. To elevate this even further to maximum points, this teaching program should be available regionally or nationally. I think in any other year I would have really struggled to do this, but one of the very few amazing things about this pandemic has been the shift to remote learning and remote teaching. As soon as we created the teaching program, we were able to post about it all over social media, and because it's online on Zoom, people from all over the country are able to log on and watch, and I'm sure going forward this is going to be so much more normal to be able to attract a national audience. So the top points in this section aren't all that impossible either. As with any teaching you do ever, make sure you're getting feedback. I go into that in my portfolio video as well, so make sure to check that out if you want to know more. Okay, I'm going to briefly touch on the training in teaching section. Now, people joke that you can just buy so many points if you want to. All the courses we talked about at the beginning is a good example of that. And unfortunately, I think this section may also lend itself to that train of thinking as well, because the training to teach courses are expensive. But of course, if you're interested, then by all means, it's a good investment. But you could also just choose to buy them just to tick off these boxes. The perfect example of why this is in many ways a game that you just have to play by the rules. There is the training to teach course, I think it's called training to teach, and then there's also the PG Cert, which is a formal diploma in medical education, which is actually included within my foundation year 2 job, which was a big attraction of the job. I've not come across any good free alternatives that are widely available. If anyone's got any suggestions, please comment below so we can all just help each other. My deanery were offering a free training to teach course as part of their educational provisions for their juniors. and that was actually free. So worth talking to your hospitals and deaneries if there is something that they are running. Otherwise, I think it's more likely that you'll have to go down the formal route of paying for these official courses. And last but not least, I'm going to quickly talk about the leadership section. Now, I really like the wording of the section in this portfolio. They've explicitly diversified into medical and non-medical roles of leadership. In fact, they specifically state things like charity, scouts, guides, sports. The main way to rack up the point levels in this section is to make things go from local to regional, from regional to national, similar to the teaching section. Now, at medical school, being head of your committee for basically any society will count, or even taking on leadership roles in the form of module lead or year group lead will count as well. If you are in a hospital, then again you can apply to be the foundation rep, even rota coordinator I guess might count, or elevating that into being a rep for the BMA or the GMC will help you get to that national level as well. There are loads of these roles going around all the time. At the very least, being involved in some societies at university will get you a lot of these points, so that's definitely something easy and fun to get involved with if you're still at university. Alright, so that's all the sections I'm going to cover today. That's already, I think if my maths is correct, 47 out of the 72 points that we've discussed. And hopefully you can see a large part of all of those sections are very achievable and very much in your control, as long as you are proactive and seeking out the opportunities where you can. I just want to end with my 5 top tips. Number 1 is to plan early. So find the scoring criteria document as soon as you can. I will leave a link for this year's one in the description below. I did glance at this briefly during medical school, but didn't look at it properly until my second year of being a doctor. So it was very frantic trying to tick off lots of things that I could have easily spaced out in the years before. So yeah, the earlier you can start, the better. Number 2 is to read the wording on this document very, very carefully, especially what counts as evidence and what tips you into one points category to another. That way you can make sure the things you do are very intentional and the evidence you collect to show you've done these things is very much tailored towards what the portfolio is looking for. Point 3, leading on from that, is to make sure you keep all your certificates and letters and documents from anything you achieve or do. So things like certificates of attendance, certificates of participation, course programs with your name in it if you're presenting there, because that is what you should be in your portfolio, be it for this stage of your application or later on. I wasn't very good with this and had to painfully go through all my emails from years and years ago to find the email where they had sent the certificate as an attachment. Make sure you're just doing this as you go along. Number 4 is to make sure you get a letter of recommendation when you are doing things like your taster week, your elective, anything else where you're being supervised by a consultant or senior surgeon. The best way to do this is to actually type up the letter yourself on headed paper with the hospital or trust heading, summarizing what you did, how many days or how many hours and what the outcomes were, and then print it out and just ask your consultant to sign it. This is a bit strange because you're kind of giving words of recommendations for yourself, which feels really strange at the beginning. But as long as you write something reasonable and just present it to your consultant to make sure they're happy with it, they are a lot more likely to just quickly sign it for you than they are to write up a whole letter. Last point is, under no circumstances must you lose these easy points. What I mean is things like doing free courses online, booking online exams, just organizing a taster week in your hospital. These things do not require that much effort as, for example, publishing, presenting, getting prizes, but they still get you a good amount of points. It's worth saying at this point that everything went online this year for the year that I applied. In previous years, it's all been in person, and you actually bring your portfolio with you in a physical form, and you get points for the appearance and organization of the portfolio. So people go all out getting these leather embossed sort of big binders and having beautiful contents pages and tabs and everything. I didn't go through that experience, so I can't really advise you, and I have a feeling things might stay online for a bit longer, but if it does go back to physical forms, I will link some videos below where people go through them and what they look like. If you want to check out my other relevant videos again, go and check out my portfolio video and my MRCS video, which should be on the screen now. And thank you very much for watching. Please feel free to reach out to me with any questions you have, and see you soon.